everyone familiar with Box? Do we need an introduction? No. Okay. And
I didn't see a single hand, so it's hard to know actually.
They like
based
very
on this. Okay.
quietly nodded. Okay, I'll assume you are all familiar. Aaron doesn't know a lot about avocados,
but shampoo I'm working on.
Yeah.
So I do have to get some brandless shampoo now. So I'm excited for that.
It's a gateway product to
other $3 products.
Yes.
So.
All right. No, we're going to talk about AI, not avocados with this conversation. So start us off with just where you see. We've seen AI in a lot of consumer applications trickling out. Where do you see things on the enterprise side?
Sure. And do we have official confirmation that this is the first AI conversation in a chapel that's ever happened? Has that been like? Are we on Wikipedia for that yet?
There's got to be some chapel in Silicon Valley that's dedicated to.
I think there is one, right?
Yeah.
The auto guy or something. It has religion going on. All right. So just very briefly, just in case you are confusing us with Dropbox. So Box is this company that we started about 12 and a half years ago. It's a really simple idea. We wanted to make it really easy to share and collaborate and access files from anywhere. We were in college at the time, and then eventually decided to focus 100% on the enterprise market. So people inside of your organizations were starting to install the application and starting to use it to share files and collaborate. So we pivoted to the enterprise, dropped out of college, moved to the Valley, did that whole thing, all the required sort of ways of building a startup. We tried to execute. You guys
were actually, you were working like right next to a Fry's for a long time.
Yes, which
we just found out is owned by Kroger. I didn't realize.
Yes, which Kroger will make its way throughout the story, I'm sure. So we will make sure that happens. So we worked in a Fry's warehouse next to Fry's. Very good logistics, by the way. So congrats, Kroger, for that. So built up the company. We now have about 1,800 employees, 65% of the Fortune 500, use Box to securely manage, share, collaborate around content. And so the whole mission of the company is we want to make it incredibly simple to manage any amount of files and documents and important information in an enterprise at scale, and then be able to let companies be able to collaborate and share them securely with people in and outside their organization. And so, as you can imagine, we sit squarely at the center of this whole, massive ecosystem of, okay, how do we start to take all of the data in our business and be able to derive more information, more insights, and more intelligence from that content? So, going back 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we started trying to figure out, okay, how is machine learning going to apply to our service? And that was just very basic, probabilistic things of how could we, continue to improve the service and what content we were showing people based on, whether it's search results or activity feeds. And then, and that was really the sort of level of vision we had at the time. And then we saw this big boom occur in sort of mostly deep learning and some narrow AI use cases, especially around computer vision, where you could take any amount of photos, any amount of video, any amount of audio information, and begin to glean more and more insights and context from that content. So, for us, what we've been working on is a product called Box Skills, which takes the machine learning and artificial intelligence services from Microsoft, Google, and IBM, and we're working on Amazon as well, and plugs those into Box. So we can take the computer vision technology from Google Cloud, or the audio intelligence technology from Microsoft Azure, or the Watson sentiment analysis, and be able to work against all of the files that we have in Box when a customer wants to be able to take more context and more insights from their information. So that's what we've been up to.
Totally interoperable.
Totally interoperable.
Across those.
And the idea is, for us, we had to make this decision about a year and a half ago now, where we either were going to go build effectively all of the things that all the big companies were building, and we looked at our R&D budget and compared it to numbers that were about 100 to 500 times larger, and decided that it would be way better to partner for this one. So that was a really easy math exercise. And we decided that, okay, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, and many others were going to be building out pretty significant AI initiatives, and that we'd be better off focusing more on architecture as opposed to proprietary AI services. So we've been working on an architecture that lets us sort of effectively plug and play. I mean, as everyone in this room knows, it's way easier to say plug and play and interoperability than it is to actually do it. But we've tried.
Press a button.
Yeah, it's just a button, and it's a checkbox in an admin console. That's all it is. And it doesn't ever work that way, but that's what you hope. And but the idea is, how do we build an abstraction layer from all of the content that we manage? We have about 35 billion files that we store, and an abstraction layer from the content and all these different third-party AI services that we can basically do individual or mass transactions on, so we can begin to process data. And so if you're a retailer and you have, let's say, 100 million photos of all these different products, and you want to instantly be able to tag them with all the objects that you see inside of the photos, that's what things like Google Computer Vision are really, really good at now. Accuracy is still, constantly improving, but we think in the next couple of years, it'll certainly exceed what a human can do from especially a time standpoint and cost standpoint. So that's our kind of foray so far into some of the AI space, and then we're doing a bunch of work ourselves with more proprietary machine learning work, just to better connect the dots between how people are using information and content within Box, and then build a bunch of functionality on top of that. So we're super pumped. We think that it's going to completely change enterprise software. I think it's a requirement that I say that, obviously, but we deeply believe this. I mean, when we look at I don't even remember what the question is anymore. But
yeah, I'll go back to it.
Okay.
Let's reel you back
cool.
here.
Yeah, please reel me back. Okay.
So if you take a step back.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we?
Okay. Yes.
We're in chapel.
Rejoin us.
Okay.
And no, but where do you think? I mean, you look at your customers. You look at what you guys are doing, Silicon Valley in general, in terms of use and effectiveness and ubiquity on the enterprise side. Where are we?
Yeah.
In the trajectory?
Well, we are ubiquitous in our collective messaging of AI. so we have reached complete saturation in our ability to talk about AI. So that's we're there on the messaging side. I think in terms of where I think the industry right now is still working its way through, and it'd be cool to kind of get a survey actually maybe at some point. If I'm not good at administering surveys, so if you have a good way of doing that, that'd be great. But I think we're very early in deep, pragmatic, high leverage, high impact business use cases. I think we're I think we're collectively as an industry very early in that. So
how many of you agree with that? Show of hands. That's kind of how I do.
Okay, that's how you do. Okay, cool. Okay, you don't stratify it by like 20. Okay, raise your hand if you're less than 50% using AI. Okay, so
it's too complicated.
Yeah, that's right.
We need AI for that.
We will. Yes. Yeah. So I think everybody I think we have this feeling where we know that everything's got to change, because if you just look at your daily tasks, if I look at my daily tasks, if everybody here looks at our daily tasks, and we're just like, how many times are we using computers and software to do things where we are basically just working on behalf of the software, and we're trying to like coordinate things. We all know that like if semantic analysis was good enough, if natural language was good enough, if you could connect all the dots of all the data in my company, in my organization, and that was good enough, that the amount of times I send an email asking somebody for, hey, what was the revenue from this set of customers last quarter, and I can string that query together really, really easily, but then somebody else has to spend 2 hours, doing all of the analysis to pull it together. What if you could string that query together and the AI would just return the answer? We have access to all of the underlying data. What we don't know is how to join it, make sense of it, and make sure that our natural language is what retrieves it. So I think what we're excited about is like the raw technology is there in many cases. Our data sets aren't necessarily all collectively there. That we're not all working with our information in consistent enough ways that horizontal technology has been able to solve our problems. And this is why I think there's to some extent, even fatigue sometimes, where like we're hearing so much about AI, but the level of actual market penetration of these technologies is still very early. So I think what we're focused on, and overall with Box, we've just done this for now 12 years. I think what we'd like to do is take all of the complex technology that's out there, all of the amazing innovation, and bring it to customers and bring it to large enterprises in highly, highly applied, specific ways. So if you have a lot of photos and you want to be able to search those photos or build workflows off those photos and not have to have humans manually enter all the categories of those, we want to do that at scale in an automated way. If you have a lot of video and you want to be able to search within that video, if you have documents that you want to understand the different categorization of those documents, those are the use cases that we'd like to bring to bear first. And we're not promising a complete revolution within the next 6 months, but I think over time, when we look at all the tasks that we're doing, when we look at the work that goes on inside of our organizations, the amount of data that we're working with, I think that we're going to start to just every one of these daily experiences will become more efficient. The daily tasks that we're doing over time just become a lot simpler. So we're pretty excited. I think we're very early, but I think in certainly 3, 5, 10 years from now, we will not have predicted most of the change that will come. Even though we're talking about it so much right now.
By the way, sorry to call you out over here. You're furiously taking notes, but I saw you nodding. On the photo side, are you doing that in your organization, or?
Oh, thank God. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. Yep. There you go. And this is what we find. What most organizations have, especially with unstructured content, your documents, your files, your claims, you are only working actively on maybe 1 or 2%. So I made up a number, but certainly with your scale,
sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds great. And so you have 90+% of your data is this cold data that is effectively archived. Mm-hmm. But what if there was actually value in that you could retrieve at a moment's notice? What would that look like? We go to media customers, and they have all of this intellectual property that they can't use because they don't know what's in their archives. You go to insurance companies or banks, and they have an unbelievable wealth of information, but there's simply no way to retrieve it because everybody is relying on humans to say, okay, what was the last thing that I worked on? Where could that be? And then we can only remember a small percentage of the total amount of data that we have access to. And so the amount of redundant work that happens, the amount of miscalculations that occur, the amount of times I'm searching for the same thing over and over again, computers should be actually helping us with that, and we should be able to kind of move along to the next task in a more productive way. So thank you for taking notes. So.
Please jump in with questions, by the way. Feel free at any point. But what do you think? I mean, you talked about how you looked at your own R&D budget, decided let's partner, not build. Of your customers and people in the room here, I mean, are most people building this themselves at large enterprises, or what approach are they taking?
I think we're all probably collectively figuring out what is the proprietary advantage in the world of machine learning and AI. And I think this is just such an early space that it's pretty hard to know exactly where the line of demarcation is from my service and my data and algorithms that I could leverage from third parties. And we struggled with this internally 2 or 3 years ago. Before we made the decision, we said, okay, if what we're doing is relying on partners like Google or IBM or Microsoft for some of this advanced technology, do we feel we have enough value add to the customer? And so, but then we just inverted it and said, well, the reality is us building it ourselves is not going to be inherently valuable to the customer either. Mm-hmm. Because if at best we're going to match the technology from those vendors, it's the same argument for cloud computing. If all you're trying to do with your cloud is match what Amazon can already do or what a major public cloud can do, then is your time really going into the most valuable areas of your business? Because your customer doesn't care where the compute is. Maybe the regulator does, but we'll work through that. So if your time and energy is being spent matching what the market can sell to you at basically maybe a fraction more margin maybe, then your R&D budget and your time and your innovation and your IP is not going to the right area. And so we had to ask ourselves the same question. I think so many customers are doing the same thing, which is, okay, so if I can send some workloads to public clouds or private clouds or work with partners on this, then what probably matters more than anything is the data and the experience around how we're going to use that data in our products. And I think that's what the 21st century is going to be defined by. In the digital age, it's not going to be, it's going to be very, very hard to keep your customers captive. It's very hard to control, all distribution in the world. So what you really have to care about is customer experience and engaging experiences and building the best products. And that's going to come down, we believe, to how you're leveraging data, how you're facilitating those experiences. And so I don't think it's going to be someone's going to have a better algorithm necessarily, but someone's going to have a better data set that's going to train an algorithm for their data better, and that will hopefully compound more and more over time. So whether you're in banking or insurance or healthcare or life sciences, we think it's going to come down to the data, and we think it's going to come down to how do you manage that data, how do you extract the most amount of insights and value from that, and the algorithms are going to be not fungible, but certainly there's going to be so many, and you're going to want to be able to pull them together for the experiences that you're trying to deliver.
Any other suggestions for where people in the room should be investing their resources and time
Primarily
and energy
Box.
when it comes to...
Yeah, I'd say that should be high on the list. Yeah.
Where do you work again?
Little startup.
When it comes to AI, though.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Broadly.
Okay.
Strategy. Yes.
Still Box, but so answer's still relevant. But I think again, this is, and we have to actually, honestly, we have to always remind ourselves of this. But we sort of every new major innovation in the market, whether it's mobile, whether it's cloud, whether it's AI, we just always have to step back and say, okay, where does the value get created in this new era? What are the, and for us, we think about it as, okay, for our customers, what are the challenges going to be in this new world order, and what can we do to make that their lives as simple as possible? And so instead of having to have your data in all these different places and running all these different AI algorithms, how can we give you one platform where the AI comes to the content as opposed to the opposite of that? I would just mostly give the same advice to customers, which is try and figure out where is the value going to be in the future, what are the customer experiences that need to be solved, and importantly, that the idea, and we are guilty of this on a daily basis, but trying to step back and remember that like technology for technology's sake is not going to solve many problems. Really, ultimately, working back from what is the customer problem, what is the actual customer experience that this technology can solve. More often than not, when we try and just throw a technology into the market and we actually haven't worked back from what the customer problem is, we don't get surprised by amazing results. We mostly have a technology that nobody is utilizing because it's not fundamentally solving a problem. So I would say whatever business you're in, working back from what is the customer experience fundamentally that is deficient, and where does some form of automation, some form of intelligent experience begin to fundamentally change that. And in many cases, it will mean rewriting major parts of your underlying business processes. It will not be possible that you could just take today's software system, add AI to it, and then all of a sudden you're going to have some new magical experience, because probably the underlying business process itself is the thing that needs to be retooled. And we see this all the time with our larger customers is more digital experiences, more technology is not going to make you more competitive with an Amazon or a Google. It's going to be going back to sort of first principles and say, what ultimately was the customer trying to do? Why did they come into our store? Why did they shop with us in the first place? Why did they want our service? Then let's redesign the customer experience. And AI will naturally have some component where we can automate some process, but let's not just throw AI at today's architecture and expect that we're going to sort of revolutionize that experience. So that would be the rough advice, but that would work irrespective of whether we're talking about AI or cloud computing or mobile apps.
Okay. So any question I ask, that would be the answer?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes.
That covers at least 3 major topic areas.
What kind of interface do you have for human-in-the-loop training, for example, to help make the models better? It seems to me that's going to be an important part for everyone in the future.
Yeah. So right now, we are just relying on the existing services from, again, Google, Microsoft, IBM, and so the customer is not doing training through our interface. There are APIs that you can use from, I think, all of those players that can do custom training data sets, and that's using their interfaces. For our use case in particular, what we've sort of designed but not launched or released is, you can imagine within our user interface, when you look at a file, whether it's an image or a video or a document, you being able to effectively tell us what that piece of content is, and then it gets better and better over time to the point where that sort of feedback loop is able to disappear. So that's effectively how it will show up over time.
Other questions for Aaron? Back there?
How are you guys thinking about adversarial machine learning, particularly in your product, and how that will appear in a couple of years, and what effect do you think that'll have on growth?
Wow. I was told we would only talk about positive subjects today. So when you say adversarial, like cybersecurity attacks, or what?
So if I put 3 dots on the stop sign, I can trick a car into thinking it's a yield sign.
Right. Yeah, great question. So fortunately, and probably knock on wood, I'm sure Facebook said this like 3 years ago. So so because we're primarily working with effectively only corporate customers, and they're the ones working with their data, most of the time we're not having to worry as much about people manipulating the training sets, because they are the ones, it's their content and their training set. Certainly, if one of our external partners had some kind of adversarial use cases or negatively trained data, that would be a problem, and we'd have to make sure that we're working through that. I mean, in general, I'm scared shitless of AI. So
as a human.
As a human,
yeah.
Absolutely. Related to Box's use cases, I'm pretty optimistic. So the way that we are going to use AI, I genuinely I think is going to be fine. I think when you start to think about some of the more scary use cases in the world, fortunately, I'm hoping we won't be a part of. Yeah, this is. I mean, we're in for a couple decades of very interesting policy and regulations, and sort of AI battling AI, and it's interesting because I'm actually I'm extremely optimistic about the dimension of like jobs, for instance, on AI. I actually think that we are far too cynical and skeptical on the jobs front. I actually think jobs will just continue to change like they always have over the past 100 some odd years. And what we're really bad at is imagining how the jobs are going to change, because we can only, like, we're reflecting on today's work and like, well, what if you remove this thing? Well, then I'd be on a beach for the other 7 hours of the day, but probably we'll just move on to the next set of tasks. So I'm very optimistic on jobs, and reasonably suspicious of some of the more negative aspects of AI. I mean, even with very, very limited cybersecurity attacks, you can see the destruction that's already occurred in many cases. Layering on AI on that is pretty gnarly. So I think that I'm on the Elon Musk side of like, we got to regulate it, and also on the, I don't think this is going to end the world from jobs and the economy. So I'm hopeful
we have other things that are going to end the world.
Oh, totally. Yeah, AI won't be our first problem. So.
Other questions for Aaron?
Any plan when you are planning to give data release to the market that we can use it and try it out?
Yeah, so we just announced the technology about a month and a half ago at our conference in mid-October. It's in extreme private beta for a few select customers that have use cases.
Extreme private beta.
Yeah. This is.
There are 2 people in the whole world using it.
About 4, but it's extreme beta, and we'll be rolling it out in probably the next quarter or so. For more broader availability, and then full general availability probably about 2 quarters out.
Okay, I think there was a question over there.
So in the space of unstructured data, we looked at maybe taking this and applying it to risk models as well. So these files are more risky.
Yeah. So this one's really exciting. So now I'm going to switch to a different technology. So Box Skills. As if everybody cares about really memorizing our architecture, but I'll go for it. So Box Skills is basically where we're taking in the machine learning and AI services from all the different public clouds and putting it into Box and making it so customers choose which ones they want to turn on. That's one technology. Box Graph is our own effectively machine learning model that takes all the events and behaviors that people are doing on Box, and then we build features on top of that. So one thing that we're thinking of trying to solve is sort of this age-old problem that at least your CISO has always had, which is, I have 100,000 employees, and I want to make sure that confidential data doesn't leak from the organization. It isn't shared with the wrong entities. It's not shared with accidentally a competitor or at least somebody who's not supposed to know. And so the theory has been for 20, 30 years is, okay, well, this is fine. What's going to happen is every user is just going to tag their content, and they're going to classify the data. And I think, as we know, basically 0.001% of people do that, and they're mostly just in the legal team or the security team. But certainly no knowledge worker has ever tagged a file with something. So we basically have to find other ways to interpret and come up with implicit signals about security issues around content. And so What we're trying to do is figure out, okay, what are all the different patterns of behavior the easy thing is just user behavior analytics. So let's see what a normal set of things that a user does is, and then when they do something anomalous, let's alert a security team and call that out. That one's pretty straightforward. Many technologies do that, CASBs and others. It's still really important, and it can mean that we're focusing on more signal versus noise. But given that we're a sharing platform also, and given that we manage content, we can learn other signals from how people behave, and we can actually begin to look at content and see its similarity to other content. So maybe we know because of either a generic data set or what your specific enterprise has trained us on, we know what, if you're, let's say, in pharma, we know what a life sciences regulatory application looks like, right? We just have seen it, and you've trained it. Now we can know that all other content that looks exactly like that or has any similarity or has other content that is within a regulatory application and it shows up in another document, we know that also is pretty similar. And so we can begin to weight the risk level of that file being shared with certain entities outside the organization higher than if it's a marketing asset. And so what we want to be able to do is we recognize that probably 1% of your employee base is going to tell us anything about their files. So can we take even that 1% and learn enough from that 1% that we can connect the dots to a much more significant part of the population and how data is being used? Clearly, the only way to do that is machine learning. You would never be able to do it in any other way. And so we're working on a lot of technology around that. So we want to make sure that whether it's compliance or privacy or security, that we can make sure that the user is doing as little to nothing as possible, the system's doing as much as possible, and we try and train it with as many high leverage activities as we can.
Well, the great thing about Aaron is that you talk so fast that even in a 20-minute conversation, you can cover what most normal people cover in like an hour. Yes, we're done.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much,
All right, thank
Aaron.
you.
I'll see you over there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.